שומר סף מספר 123, וכפי שהודעתי בפרקים הקודמים, יש לנו קופון הנחה לכנס השמרנות. הקופון ההנחה הוא שומר סף באנגלית, כמו ששומעים. הפרק הזה יהיה באנגלית, אם לא נוח לכם באנגלית, אז אתם תוכלו לצפות בו עם כתוביות בערוץ הוידאו של שומר סף. אם לא נוח לכם באנגלית, תוכלו להאזין גם בפודקאסט. האורח שלנו דובר אנגלית, אבל הוא מבין את כל מה שאמרתי. שלום, hello, מייק דוראן.
Hello, and I want my coupon.
Come to the conference and I will see what I can do for you.
I want my discount coupon.
So you are a senior fellow at Hudson, but recently you started a center.
Yes, I am the director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at the Hudson Institute.
All centers about the Middle East are about peace and security. It's amazing how many centers we have for that. And yet nothing constructive is happening recently, especially what we convened to speak about today, which is the JCPOA, the nuclear deal with Iran. So perhaps, Mike, first an update.
That's a hard thing to do. We're in a holding pattern, and there are two different views about what's going on. And I changed my mind. I switch back between the two views every 5 minutes and change my mind. One view says that the JCPOA is in an induced coma, and it's going to die. That it really is dead, but the Biden administration doesn't want to admit that it's dead, so it's basically put it in an induced coma, and it's going to let it just sit there in bed forever without ever reviving it. There's increased evidence that that's actually the case. The other view says they're just laying low for a minute. They basically finished it, negotiating it, but they can't push it through at this minute for political reasons. So they're going to wait till a more opportune moment to push it through.
The political reason is that they are doing two things simultaneously, right? That they are employing sanctions against Putin because of Ukraine, but Putin is also the mediator in the Vienna talks between the United States and the Iranians, who humiliatingly would not speak to the Americans who are groveling at their feet.
All of that is true. I think the Ukraine war took some of the luster some of the luster off of the nuclear deal. That's because the nuclear deal is based on the assumption that China, Russia, and the United States can all work together, not just to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but to stabilize the Middle East. So it's the reigning assumption of the deal is a concert system with Russia. And so now Biden has been forced, because of the Ukraine war, into more of a kind of a Cold War stance against the Russians. And it's hard in this moment politically to come out with an agreement that is going to give Russia sanctions relief so that it can do work on the Iranian nuclear program. That's one thing. But there's another thing too, Gadi, which you may have seen in the news lately. I may be getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but there's this very intriguing story that's come out about these two gentlemen, one with an Iranian name, Arian Tahirzadeh, and the other one with an obviously Islamic name. It's not clear that it's Iranian, Ali Haidar, but clearly a Shiite name, or most likely a Shiite name, if it's not made up. And these two guys befriended. They got apartments, plural, in a building that had lots of Secret Service officers living in it. Secret Service is the agency that does the security for the president, the vice president, and so on. And they befriended Secret Service officers, and these are foreign agents. These are foreign agents. They befriended foreign service officers, pretending themselves to be American in Homeland Security officers, doing an undercover investigation. And they gave lots of gifts and favors to these Secret Service officers, including use of an apartment. They had several apartments that they owned or that they rented. The use of a car, use of apartments, all kinds of gifts. It's a huge scandal. I think the likelihood that these are Iranian agents is very, very, very high. But so far, the government has just released little tidbits of information that don't allow you to decide which country is behind these agents. Now, this is a really big deal.
But it's been confessed that they are agents? It's been confirmed that they are agents?
No. It hasn't been confessed that they are. But look, they had, I can't remember off the top of my head if it was 3 or 5 apartments. I think 5 apartments, cars, an enormous amount of weaponry, including sniper rifles and so on. So clearly there was a lot of money behind this operation. There's no obvious commercial, commercial benefit from scamming these guys. So one assumes that there's a country behind this operation, or we live in a world like. Or we live in a world like James Bond, where there's a nefarious organization, Spectre, that is.
So, but what have they done except befriend the Secret Service people? Did they manage to put their hands on any intelligence?
Well, one assumes because the 2 Secret Service officers have been suspended from duty, maybe 3. Anyway, a number, and one of them was in the vice president's security detail. The other was in the president's security detail, I think.
So the president's security detail is hanging out with suspected Iranian agents.
Yeah, the funny thing is that this was foiled. So here you're a Secret Service officer, and this guy with an Iranian name starts giving you gifts like no one has ever given you before, and no alarm bells go off, right? But the policeman who blew the whistle on these guys was a postal inspector. There had been some kind of there had been some kind of incident at the apartment building, and the postal inspector had interviewed these guys, Aryan Tahirzadeh and Ali Haidar, and he thought that their stories just didn't add up, and he. And he ran a background check on them and found out that they don't exist in the government database. So,
oh my God! So we can trust the Secret Service and in general the government to make a longer and stronger agreement with Iran. Maybe Mike, this is a back channel for the JCPOA, and you just didn't notice.
It could well be. I know that you hold the press in very high regard these days.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's really worth looking at the press on this subject, because they're being spoon-fed little details by the government about who these guys are, and the information they're told is what the guys said when they were interviewed. So the one guy, Tahirzadeh with the Iranian name, he said that the other guy paid for everything and made all the decisions, and he, Tahirzadeh, had no idea why they were doing this.
You know, I'm going to suspend judgment about this because I don't form any opinion until I hear Jen Psaki, and I haven't heard her on this yet. So,
but this is what I'm saying is that nobody's asking questions. Like the government must have. They've given us information that that the one guy, Ali Haidar, he had multiple entries to Iran. He went back and forth. He had a passport with multiple entries to Iran, but he also had a Pakistani connection. So they're pushing the Pakistani. They're emphasizing the Pakistani connection. Maybe he's with ISI, with the Pakistani intelligence.
So what's your source for most of this? For all of this,
I have no source. It's just look. It's very likely it's a state. And if you follow the news on the JCPOA, one of this is the more serious point here is that you remember that the administration wanted or the Iranians demanded from the Biden administration that they remove the IRGC from the State Department's list of terrorist
organizations,
terrorist organizations, and so. The Biden administration went back to the Iranians and said, now this is true. I'm not making this up, right? It would be a little bit okay. We understand why you would like to get off the terrorist list, but it would be easier for us if you would stop this plan that you have in motion that we know about to kill former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Foreign Assistant Secretary of State Brian Hook, right? So could you just promise us, without crossing your fingers, that you'll stop this plan to kill these guys? And the Iranian answer was no, we won't.
Oh wow! We shouldn't be laughing, Mike. We shouldn't be. No, this is a superpower.
We should be laughing, Gotti. It's very important. These guys, the greatest tool that we have is to hold a mirror up to this behavior and laugh at it. I think it's absolutely the greatest tool that we have. So at the same time that this is going on, that our negotiator in Vienna, Rob Malley, is saying to these guys, would you please discontinue your plan to kill our officials? This plot breaks. The news of this plot breaks, and of this operation to befriend the Secret Service officers. And our press, this is the thing that kills me, our press doesn't even mention any of that. There's not even speculation that these guys might be Iranian. No mention in the press that the guy that Tahirzadeh is only an Iranian name. That's all it is. Now, maybe it's not his real name. Maybe he's being manipulated by some other power, right? He's a stooge. There are all kinds of possibilities. But since that one guy has gone to Iran multiple times, that's been shown, and Iran has an active plot to kill American officials, it seems to me to be worth asking a few questions. That's all. Just a few questions.
So we'll wait for you to write a piece about that, since you have access to the press, except Shomer Saf, which is the good side of the press, as you know, as a fan of Shomer Saf.
Are you now mainstream media?
No, I'm alternative media.
You're alternative media. Will you always be alternative media, or will you be mainstream someday?
We're working on.
You had the former Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, I also had Mike Pompeo, and he wasn't killed by the IRCG. You interviewed him with me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, but doesn't that make you mainstream? It doesn't make you mainstream.
Not in Israel. No. In Israel, you can't be mainstream if you say the truth. That automatically they have. If you have
the former prime minister on, your alternative.
yeah, because did you see his interviews on the mainstream media? They don't let him speak because since the test of your loyalty to the press corps is your hostility to Netanyahu, if you interview him, you must not let him finish a single sentence and show that you really gave him a hard time. Otherwise, you'll be considered.
You didn't let him get away with the disinformation.
Exactly. It's you know the parallels in America, so it's
I do.
It's exactly the same. So first of all, this is the most encouraging news I've heard from you in half a year about the JCPOA, that there is a possibility that it will not be revived, because this may mean, or would it mean, that Iran would have a more difficult time economically?
Yes. Well, somewhat. Can I before I answer that, can I give you a couple of other reasons why I think it's dead?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so like I said, why at this particular moment I think it's dead. 5 minutes from now, I'll think, no, it's not. But another thing is Saudi Arabia. So number one, they can't go out in front of the TV cameras and say we're giving sanctions relief to Russia because of the war in Ukraine. Number two, they can't go out and say we're giving all this sanctions relief to Iran because Iran is trying to kill American officials, among other things. Right? They're doing that. Number three, Biden is finding out that his courtship of Iran is causing real trouble with the Saudis and the Israelis too. But the Saudi Arabia is important because the cost of living in the United States is skyrocketing. I assume it's skyrocketing in Israel too. I think it's a global phenomenon. All the inflation. No.
Yeah, not as bad as it is in America, and Israelis are less sensitive. So because just to give an example, if we had your gas prices, we would think that gas is free. Right.
Of course, but when you're used to them and then it changes, it's dramatic. Yeah. And in my across the street from my office here, I buy a sandwich at a sandwich shop, and in the last couple of months, it's gone from $11 for my sandwich and potato chips up to over $15. So it's amazing how things are, and that's typical.
But you don't have 35% inflation.
No, but food prices are going way up. Wow. I'm not. I don't have the official numbers here, but it's not looking good. Everyone's feeling it. Everyone's talking about it, and gas, energy prices are a big part of that. A big part of food prices is, from fertilizer to the tractors that till the soil, to the trucks that take it to market and everything. There's a lot of the price has to do with energy, and energy is going up. Now, Biden is committed here at home to this net zero policy of no more carbon energy. We're just he's trying to shut it all down. We could be the biggest oil and gas producer in the world, or one of the top ones, but he doesn't want that to happen. And so the price of gas and the price of oil is going through the roof. So he turned to Saudi Arabia and said, "Hey guys, will you pump more oil so the price will go down?" And the Saudis said, "Take a flying leap." Because you'll remember when he came into office, he tried to turn them into a pariah. Those were his words, because of Mohammed bin Salman. And then there's the Iran deal. The Saudis don't like the Iran deal at all. So historically, the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia was the United States provides security to Saudi Arabia, and in return, the Saudis help the United States manage the international energy markets. So Biden remembers that presidents in the past have had this lever where they pull on the Saudi lever to regulate markets, and he's trying to pull on it, but he didn't notice that he and his team cut all the cables that connect the lever to the Saudis. so he's pulling, and it's not happening. So that's a big deal because he's coming up for midterm elections in November, and then we have 2024. And I think the feeling in the country is very much against him. So he's got to do something about prices, and there's a connection between his Iran policy and the oil price.
And this is going to be winter for the midterms, and that may exacerbate the energy price repercussions for the Biden administration.
Sure. It's going to be, everyone is going to feel it. They're going to feel it in their heating bill. They're going to feel it in the bill to fill up their car with gas, and they're going to feel it in their food, like I was saying. But
this administration, Mike, is very, very ideological.
Yes.
Do you hear the siren behind me, or it doesn't get into the mic? Do you hear a siren?
No, I don't hear it. No.
We're very jumpy here about sirens because we are recording 2 days after the terror attack.
Right.
I don't know if you saw how Reuters, I think it was, I don't remember which press agency, I can dig it up, described the terror attack in Tel Aviv.
No.
Palestinian shot by Israeli defense forces after bar attack.
Are you serious? Well, I mean, of course,
I'm absolutely serious. Yeah. Let me try to make it up while we speak.
Unbelievable.
So
of course it's not unbelievable. I mean, I feel bad about laughing about such a thing, but I'm not laughing about the event. The event is horrific. I'm laughing about the ridiculous media. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, they're ridiculous anti-Israeli bias, and what does it do? It changes they have a division of the world into the good guys and the bad guys, and they won't let the facts confuse them. But you were talking about the Saudis telling the Biden administration to go take a leak, or I don't remember what.
Take a flying leap.
Leap. Okay. A leak is good too, isn't it? I have a more rude metaphor about a flying something, but since Americans are going to listen to this, I'm not going to.
My mother might listen to this. My mother likes you. Let's not.
Yeah, and your mother's a Democrat. We need to convince her. It's your mother is our audience.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that. I think she's 90 years old. She's kind of set in her ways. I don't think we're going to turn her into a Republican. I try to tell her she's a Republican, but she doesn't listen to me.
Here's the, let me show our viewers. Do you see this? Israeli forces shoot dead Palestinian after Tel Aviv bar attack. Actually, Reuters. This is how they portray a terror attack in Tel Aviv, in which a guy with an automatic weapon shot random people, killed 3, wounded many others in the middle of Tel Aviv. And I don't know if you know, but in Tel Aviv, nobody carries a gun. Israelis in other places like to carry a gun, but in Tel Aviv, it's not cool because we are the good guys. We are the peaceful guys. It's very uncool to have a gun in the back of your belt. So unlike Jerusalem, there was nowhere to shoot him. Because if that happens in Jerusalem, there'd be 4 or 5 people around with a gun, and something would happen. Our conversation is wandering to many places. So I'll use the opportunity also to ask you if Ben Gurion behind your back in a cool Tel Aviv attire, probably without a gun, is.
I think he's in Miami Beach as a retiree in Miami Beach.
I'm sorry, he retired to the Negev, and I will not let you spread misinformation.
This is an alternative Ben Gurion.
So is this something you did for Shomer Saf, or do you have Ben Gurion in your office?
I have Ben Gurion in my office all the time. As a hipster.
Why? Why Ben Gurion of all possible options?
I've never finished decorating my office. And I wanted to put something on the wall, and I like that a lot. It amuses me. It's this Israeli artist who does historic figures as not just Israelis. He does Moshe Dayan. He does Abraham Lincoln as hipsters. What they would look like today as hipsters. So I don't know. I love Ben Gurion. He's a hero of mine anyway. So
for what? What's your what made him your hero?
God, what a good question. I never tried to articulate it. First of all, he's just, I wrote I wrote some things about, I wrote a book about the Eisenhower and the Middle East. And I read some of Ben Gurion's diaries. I wrote a book about 1948 Arab-Israeli War. I read some of his diaries there too. And I just reading his diaries is amazing. Just an amazing man. I mean, the guy, the number of levels he was working on simultaneously, I think, was incredibly impressive. His courage. His strength and courage is amazing. You know, in 56, he was threatened with nuclear war by the Soviets while the Americans were coming down on him like a ton of bricks. I mean, he was fighting two superpowers simultaneously. And I think if I had been in that same situation and the Soviet Union was threatening nuclear war and the president was threatening to destroy my economy or whatever, I think I'd buckle. I think I'd lose a lot of sleep. I'd be worried, but he dealt with it incredibly intelligently, just incredibly intelligently. And this is a guy who knew from birth probably that he was born to do something great. He had no doubt about it ever. You remember the left. The left a few years ago tried to turn your left, the Israeli left. They tried to turn. I'm drawing a blank on his name. The foreign minister in the 50s.
Sharet?
Yes, Sharet. They tried to turn Sharet into the patron saint of peace now. You know, the theory was, and it's a total theory. There was a debate over Israeli foreign policy in the 50s between the hard line of Ben Gurion and the softer line of Sharet, and unfortunately Ben Gurion went out and Sharet didn't win out. And I think I would just tell anyone who believes that nonsense to go look at Sharet's diaries and then look at Ben Gurion's diaries. And Ben Gurion is Churchill, and Sharet is what's his name? To be or not to to be or not to be. Hamlet. Yeah, he's Hamlet, right? It's like me and the Imani. Does God love me? Every diarist uses the diary for different reasons. Ben Gurion uses his diary to record for history the great things that he's doing, to think through a problem. Never has a moment of doubt for a second. And Sharet is writing about, oh, Ben Gurion looked at me the wrong way today. Why doesn't he like me more? It's like all his worries and concerns and so on. And you can just from the diary, you can see that the one guy was meant to found a nation and one guy wasn't. Now, not that he didn't have many talents, Sharet did, but anyway, that's a much longer answer than you wanted.
No, but he should be the patron saint of the left, because the left has turned itself to a very large extent into an obsession with the ritual of self-purification. It doesn't look at the world; it looks in the mirror. And part of my disagreement with the left is that you should formulate your stance not based on what you think should be done, but rather on what would look the most benevolent in the eyes of others or of history. But that's a long debate. Let's go back. Yeah. I
know we're going to go back. But let me just say, I thought you were going to say they evaluate things by their intentions. And political action should be evaluated by the likely outcome from the not the beautiful intention of the action, but what's likely to result from it. No, isn't that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very Thomas Sowell insight. The whole economic writing of Thomas Sowell is an attempt to explain to public officials that the intentions are not the what should count when formulating a policy, but rather what incentives and constraints a policy creates. So that's pretty much saying the same things. That's to say that great minds think alike. You and Thomas Sowell. And so back to the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. One option is that it's being derailed. The other option is the ideological option, I would call it, because I don't know about Biden. I don't know about Biden's capacity to shape policy, but around him are a very dedicated team of Obama people, from Susan Rice to Rob Malley, and others, for whom the nuclear deal is an obsession. And their idea, and I've read your many writings about this, their idea is appeasement of Iran should be the cornerstone of the US policy, because this will stabilize the Middle East. Now, this is so outrageous a concept that for Israelis to hear the idea that someone wants to base security and order in the Middle East on Iran is mind-boggling. So what exactly are these people thinking?
So they believe, they sold themselves on the doctrine that the conflict between the United States and Iran is a result of the extreme agendas of Israel and Saudi Arabia.
So we are the problem. Us and
you are the problem. Yeah, you Gadi Taub are the problem. You and Mohammed bin Salman, because you have these paranoid insecurities about Iran, and you are prosecuting these conflicts with Iran, and you want the United States to be your proxy. That was the words of that was pretty much the word of I think I'm quoting Barack Obama directly, that the allies want us to be their proxies in this war with Iran.
So we are basically, Israel is trying to get America to fight its wars. That's the theory.
Yes, and Israel is functioning as a catapult that's throwing the United States into conflict with Iran. And so one of the goals of the Iran deal is to establish a dialogue with Iran that Israel is not part of, and that the Saudis are not part of, and to appease the Iranians, basically, and reassure them that we're not trying to destroy them, and that they can solve most of their security problems in concert with the United States, in engagement with the United States rather than in conflict with it. That's the theory. It as you say, it's a cockamamie theory. It is, but it is the theory, and it's in black and white in the major articles written by Rob Malley in 2020, who's now the Iran coordinator, and Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, when he was the foreign policy advisor to Joe Biden during Joe Biden's campaign for president. So in a sense, Joe Biden endorsed this idea as well, indirectly. So that's the theory. It doesn't make any sense as a foreign as a constructive way to stabilize the Middle East. It's not going to work. And they've maneuvered themselves into a position right now where they can't go forward with the deal, at least for the moment, for these political reasons that I mentioned. The question is, are they laying low, and they're until a more opportune political moment, and then they'll spring it on us, or is the thing dead? Is it in an induced coma and it's never going to come back? And I don't know. I'm of two minds, as I said. I go back and forth on that.
I'm not as knowledgeable as you are, but I would guess that they are laying low because these people are very, very ideological. And not very subtle. And the ideology, and we won't get into it again because I think we spoke about that. They've grown up on the Edward Said paradigm, and they're at heart they're suspicious of the West, that is, of themselves. And as my friend Peter Berkowitz quipped once, they are angry at Israel and Saudi Arabia because Israel and Saudi Arabia support America, and therefore they're on the wrong side of history. So the Americans don't like you if you support them. And it's almost sadomasochistically, they love Iran because Iran hates them, or something of that sort. Now, since they are ideological, I think they will move forward with the deal. But they're not saying what you are saying to the American public. I mean, they wrote these pieces in Foreign Policy, I think it was.
Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs. Yeah, that I read you quoting, where they explain this, that this will be a new order in very soft words, but to the American public and to the Israelis, they're selling the Iran deal as a containment measure designed to stop or slow the Iran's military atomic project. Obama actually, if I may use the term, directly lied when he said that this blocks all paths to a nuclear bomb. So what's their game?
Yes, absolutely. Everything you say is true. They've developed a whole rhetoric in which they say they are doing the opposite of what they're actually doing. For example, saying that we are going to counter all malign activity of Iran in the region. And just because we're doing this deal with Iran doesn't mean we can't counter the malign activity, and we can still put sanctions on Iran's militias and so forth. But while they're saying that, they're actually working to take all of the most significant sanctions off, so that all the money, hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 9 years, are going to flow to Iran because of this deal, and a significant portion of those hundreds of billions is going to flow into the coffers of the IRGC, regardless of whether it's sanctioned in part or in whole by the United States. So they're going to try to deflect your attention from that simple fact, which is that they're making the IRGC very powerful, as well as offering a pathway to a bomb.
Are they not aware that Iran, with strengthened proxy powers and a nuclear umbrella, is going to continue doing what it did until now? That is, undermine Arab regimes around it and strive for hegemony in the region?
I think they have to be aware. Of course, they have to be aware. I think to a certain extent, they believe their own nonsense, meaning that once there's an established relationship with the United States, that the United States will be able to moderate that this diplomatic engagement will be able to moderate the Iranians, just like the Germans believed that all of their economic interaction with Mr. Putin was going to moderate him. And a whole, several generations of Americans believed wholeheartedly, and this is on the right and on the left, that bringing China into the World Trade Organization and enmeshing it in the global capitalist economy wasn't going to bring about exactly a democracy in China, but it was going to be a kinder, gentler regime that was more attuned to the needs of the populace, more constrained by the aspirations of the middle class, more concerned about peace and stability in the world, interested in cooperating closer with the United States. That was a very fervently held belief on the right and on the left in the United States. And so this thinking about Iran like this, it's a legacy of that. It's a fossil left over from the end of history moment at the end of the Cold War.
So now to my favorite topic, if you don't mind, which is the I've been having
which
arguments.
Is you?
No, my work, which has been the argument made here, and apparently it convinced people enough to treat it as self-evident that it was a mistake to leave the JCPOA originally, and that because Trump left it, the Iranians are now closer to a bomb.
Yeah, it's such nonsense. It's such nonsense. I mean, also the Israelis who are pushing that line have also elevated Netanyahu's role in all of this. So the story is that Netanyahu convinced Trump to do this. So really, it's Netanyahu who's responsible for the and I can't remember which Israeli with a very significant defense pedigree said that this is the greatest foreign policy blunder in the history of the state of Israel. You know, it's up there with the 73 war. The Concepcia in the 70s. It's so ridiculous. I'll tell you what I thought was really funny. I think we talked about it, not on your podcast, but privately. The interview that Ben Caspit did with Gadi Eisenkot about 2 months ago, maybe. And Gadi Eisenkot says, because he's getting ready to start his political career, right? So he's signaling which side he's on, and he says, you know, when I was chief of staff, they, meaning Netanyahu, Ron Dermer, and Yossi Cohen, they didn't consult with the security establishment at all. Those three, Netanyahu, Dermer, and Cohen, they kept all of the discussion of the Iran nuclear question among themselves. And so I had the misconception that the JCPOA was going to continue forever, or until the end of its term. So I thought I had about a decade of breathing room. So I wasn't making plans for the eventuality of the JCPOA being scrapped. And they didn't consult me, so I didn't know it might be scrapped. And I just want to say, what did they tie you up and plug your ears and put you in a room with no media? Because Donald Trump, when he was running for president, said, I'm going to rip up the Iran deal. Every Republican candidate, except for Rand Paul, said they were going to rip up the Iran deal. Most of them, with one exception, that's Jeb Bush, said that they were going to rip up the Iran deal on day one, right? So like, Gadi Eisenkot couldn't hear any of that. He didn't know. It's so silly. It's just I can't. I guess we have to refute these arguments because they're so widely held, but they're held for a reason. People want to create a story that makes Netanyahu the bad guy, and they want to say that all these problems wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Netanyahu
and Trump. And they want to, and of course the government wants to get along with the American government, with the Biden team, which is saying that it's all Trump's fault. But this is just not true, and it's not. Look, it's demonstrably not true, because the Iranians are able to push ahead so quickly on this enrichment because the deal left them with a military nuclear program, all of the key elements that they needed. It never took it away from them. They're able to continue to advance it and develop it, even under the period of restrictions of the deal. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Do the people who are saying this think that like 5 years from now, under the deal, when there's no possibility of, or in just 3 years, there's no possibility of snapback. Snapback goes away. Iran gets richer and richer and richer, and then the deal evaporates because evaporation is baked into the deal in the sunset clauses. And then we turn to Iran and say, okay, time for a longer and stronger deal. And the Iranians are going to say, okay. Like what do they think is going to happen at that moment? So you either have to deal with it now
in all of its difficulty, or you put it off until and let Iran get stronger, and your chances of doing anything about it decrease. As bad as your chances are now, they're only going to get worse over time.
And would have Donald Trump's and Mike Pompeo's policy of maximum pressure helped stop the Iran deal?
Well, it's the best thing that we possibly have out there, and it's what the Israeli government, this Israeli government, I'm talking about Bennett, Prime Minister Bennett, and Benny Gantz, Yair Lapid. Behind closed doors, they're telling the Americans that Iran is weak, Iran is vulnerable, Iran can be deterred, Iran has weaknesses that can be exploited. We should not give them sanctions relief, and we should try to deter them. That's what they're saying. That's maximum
they're
pressure.
basically saying return to the Trump policy. Yes,
but they won't use those words, and they'll only say it in private. They won't say it in public because they don't want to get in a public fight with so that Bennett can then say publicly that, unlike the other guy. We all know who the other guy is. Unlike the other guy, I'm not, I'm a man of action, not just of words. I don't just go around making proclamations. I'm really taking care of the problem. That's his theory of the case.
What was the effect of Netanyahu's speech in Congress? Because, the left here is saying, and I was on the left then, so I also was part and parcel of the fright. We were afraid that you are creating a rift with the United States that we will not be able to mend.
You were afraid that Netanyahu was doing that.
Yeah.
Because he was strongly disagreeing with the president.
Yeah, no, because he went behind the president's back to speak to Congress.
He didn't go behind the president's back. He did it right out and open. I mean, it was not. There's no sneakiness about it. It's not.
No, I didn't mean sneakiness. But it is considered, Mike. It is considered. A head of state usually conducts his business with another head of state. To go to the parliament of a state against the explicit wishes of a head of state is a very bold movement. In retrospect, I see the wisdom in it, but it was. I
thought it was fabulous. Everybody who thinks like me thought it was fabulous, except there was a significant even among conservative Jews who support Israel and who are Republicans. It made some of them uneasy. A friend, I'm thinking of a friend of mine in particular who was, 2,000 years of Jewish history says don't go stick your thumb in the eye of the strongest guy in the world. That's not wise. So, but it was very important. It changed. Look, I was arguing.
Because here the Bennett government here says, look, it produced nothing. The deal just went ahead. So what was the point of it?
No, it did. Look, it totally changed the atmosphere here. You remember when he went before Congress, he said that Iran has taken over four Arab capitals, and so he connected one of the things that Obama had done quite successfully in terms of his propaganda was he had convinced a lot of people that this was a narrow arms control agreement and it wasn't an appeasement of Iran writ large. And the prime minister did a very good job of explaining to people in very clear, accessible language that this was appeasement of Iran writ large, and that Iran was not only being put on a glide path to a bomb, they were also being given the keys to the whole Middle East, to the whole Arab world. And I had been trying to make that point in my articles and interviews and things, and it got no traction whatsoever anywhere. And then Netanyahu came to Washington, and after that, boom! All of a sudden, everybody saw it. Not everyone. The left was still against it, but they could see it clearly. Remarkable performance, a remarkable amount of influence over American thinking. It's really unusual. There are very few unlike rock stars and Hollywood stars, politicians don't travel across cultures very well. They're usually popular at home and not really so much abroad. It's remarkable the kind of traction that Netanyahu gets in America.
And what were the practical results? The people did this galvanize resistance to the deal, or opposition to the deal? Did this make Obama's life harder? Did it lead to
totally.
sanctions? Did it help Trump leave the deal?
No, totally. Look, it didn't stop the deal, but it helped. It educated American opinion about it, and it laid the groundwork for what Trump later did. Now, Trump. One of the things that these guys say, the supporters of this abomination, they say that look, Trump's policy didn't work. But this is a joke because number one, Trump's maximum pressure policy was only in place for about 18 months, for a year and a half. Donald Trump seriously tried, and this has been forgotten. He seriously tried to get the longer and stronger deal that everyone said was out there. So he went for it, and he failed. He couldn't get the Europeans. He went to Congress and he said, "I want to try to get a longer and stronger deal. Here are the areas where I think the deal is deficient. Sunset clauses, inspections, and so on." And he said, "I want to try to plug the holes in the deal, get a longer and stronger deal." And the Democrats in Congress told him, if you can get the Europeans to agree, well, then we'll talk to you. So they just punted and gave all responsibility to the Europeans. And then Trump spent a year and a half trying to get the agreement with the Europeans, and he couldn't get the Germans to agree. This is my understanding. This is what I hear. It could have been, maybe that wasn't just the Germans, but particularly the Germans were unwilling to extend the sunsets, which is absolutely crucial, because that's when the deal ends, all restrictions on Iran's nuclear program end, and that's in 2031. And so if you're not going to extend those, then you're never going to get a longer and stronger
deal. It's actually at the end of 1930, because it's the 1st of January 1931. So it's 1 year less than it seems. And January 2031. I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, no, you said it until 31, and I just mentioned that it's the very beginning of 31. So it's basically at the end of this decade that they will expire. And the fact that Germany is not sensitive at all to the fact that this is the only regime with an actual Nazi ideology about the Jews, except maybe Hamas, and they are not willing to help limit it. Our friend, our mutual acquaintance, Dan Shiftan, says that he once printed a shirt in which it said, "When in doubt, ask a European and do the opposite." Because you can't trust Europe to do anything else but appeasement. The appeasement has traveled from Chamberlain eastwards and conquered the whole continent. So we have a real grudge on Europe. Because we published a piece together in Haaretz in which we said that it would be beneficial to Israel to directly confront the Biden administration about its Iran policy and create a collision, basically, or a public controversy. So explain that. Why would that be good for Israel?
Israel needs to do, in one form or another, it doesn't have to follow Netanyahu's example in every respect, but it needs to educate, direct its supporters in the United States about its interests and about the problems of the Biden approach. Biden is appeasing Iran. Biden is pretending not to appease Iran. You know, Tony Blinken and Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, he came to the Negev a couple of weeks ago to the conference, stood arm in arm with the Israelis and the Bahrainis and the Moroccans and whoever else was there, the Emiratis. And then he said, "Don't worry, Israel, we've got your back against Iran." Now, it's totally not true. They're appeasing Iran. They're giving Iran a bomb. They're giving it hundreds of billions of dollars, or they're intending to. They may not succeed. So why is he standing there and saying, we've got your back, Israel? Because he wants the picture that the American public sees is a Secretary of State supporting Israel against Iran. And that's all that matters to these guys, is how this stuff plays in the local media market here in the United States, which they control, right? So they get the propaganda. They're propagandizing their people. This is another really stupid thing. Pardon me for being so blunt, but it really stupid that Gadi Eisenkot said in that Ben Caspit interview. He said he took Naftali Bennett to task. He criticized Naftali Bennett because Bennett refused to meet with Rob Malley, the Iran coordinator here for the Iran policy, Rob Malley is the intellectual architect of the appeasement strategy, which is designed to downgrade Israel. And Naftali Bennett refused to meet with him when he came, and Gadi Eisenkot thought that was rude and wrong. And this is a dumb opinion for two reasons. Number one, Rob Malley is about 3 rungs down in the State Department. So just by pure reasons of protocol, there's no reason why Rob Malley should be meeting with the prime minister. He should be meeting with his counterpart. That's how the government works all the time. But aside from that, the reason Rob Malley is coming to talk to the Israelis, to consult with the Israelis, is not to listen to what they have to say. He's not going to listen to a word that they say. He's going to sit politely. He's going to listen to what they say. He's going to hear what they say. He's going to nod like this, and then he's going to go home and forget about it. But he's going to be able to say back home, I consulted with the Israelis. I consult all the time. Oh, I talk to them all the time. No, they don't think that this is a problem. They told me X, Y, and Z. That's also why it's so pernicious what the security establishment in Israel saying it's all Trump's fault. Biden is really trying to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and so on, because that signals to the American public, that to the supporters of Israel in the United States, particularly the Democrats, that everything is great between Israel and the Biden administration, and that this American policy doesn't represent any threat to Israel.
So what we argued in that piece was that if Israel is going to have to go it alone, which is what is shaping up if the deal goes through, and it will be very hard because the deal is sanctioned by the Security Council in the UN, and the deal is the jewel in the crown of this American administration, and so what is shaping up is that if Israel acts now, an American president would see it as an affront to his policy. Iran would try to pull America into whatever Israel does. And then in the public opinion, it would be easy for the administration to say, look, the Israelis, we did everything we could for them, but now they're pulling us into a conflict that we don't want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's I agree with you totally. That's why we wrote this article together. In that,
I agree with you. Let's be more precise. But this is not all, because if as we recommend in the piece, Israel goes for a public confrontation with the Biden administration, how would that help?
One of the things that is another thing that's wrong with the approach of this government of not, first of all, I have to give some credit to this government. It's more and more, it is signaling how uncomfortable it is with the Iran deal. So let me give credit to them. But to those in Israel who are arguing that Trump and Netanyahu caused all the problems, and that Biden is really trying to do right by Israel and so on, they are helping those people who are trying to appease Iran, who are trying to downgrade Israel. They're making it easier for them, but they're also insulting the supporters of Israel in the United States. That the Trump supporters are the voters in the United States who strongly support Israel. And I think Israelis you don't want to be guilty of ingratitude here by calling them the cause of all the problems. That they're trying to work with you to solve the problem. And so I do, though, think, as we argued in the piece, the Israeli government does have to be careful about falling into this trap that you mentioned, that it can allow itself to look like it is embroiling the United States in its war. And so what we said in there, Gadi, is that what the Israeli government should do is it should follow the example of Churchill in World War II, when the war first broke out between Germany and Britain, and the United States wasn't in it. Churchill went to the Americans and said, "Give us the tools, and we will finish the job." Because the isolationists in America didn't want to get involved. There was a lot of opposition to the British Empire in American politics. And Churchill knew that if he said, "Come join me, America, help me with the war, help me fight the war," he would be accused of trying to get America to fight Britain's wars for it. It's imperial wars for it. So what he did is he said, "Give us the tools, and we'll finish the job." And I think Israel should have exactly the same message. One, there are tools it needs, like planes for refueling, refueling planes in flight, but also it will just force the administration to explain why it doesn't want to do that. I mean, it will force it to openly admit that it's actually on Iran's side.
Which is not going to sell well with the American public.
Will not sell well with the American public does not like Iran. The American public likes Israel. The American public does not like Iran. The polling on that, the data on that is incredible.
Which is why Obama had to sell this based on a lie. This is why Obama.
They have to lie. They have to lie to sell this. They have to say that it's doing things it isn't doing because otherwise it makes no sense to the average person.
Mike, that has been an illuminating conversation. Let's reconvene when and if we know something more concrete. I don't know in which 5 minutes of yours, when you believe in or not, but certainly an interesting thing. And I would like to also speak with you about Ukraine. But for now, our hour is up. And I thank you for your time. And we will see each other on this forum in the future.
Thank you. I'll come back anytime you want me.
Great. Thanks so much.